modern dogfight than any other air force. Now, with state-of-the-art computer animation, we put you in the cockpit with the top pilots of the IAF as Mirage 3 and F-15 fighters take on combat-tested MiGs. Experience the battle and examine the tactics as we reenact the dogfights of the Middle East. June 7th, 1967, during the Six-Day War. 3 Israeli Mirage fighters were speeding towards the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula. The Israelis, threatened by hostile armies massing on their borders, had made preemptive strikes against the Soviet-equipped Arab air forces. Now they were fighting on a broad front against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. Lieutenant Giora Rome was flying number 3. Suddenly, GCI, ground-controlled intercept, crackled over the radio. Israeli troops in the strategic mountain pass of Bir Gafkafa were under attack by MiG-17s. The Mirages, designed to take on enemy aircraft, jettisoned their external tanks and heavy loads of bombs. They were ready for combat. In the fading light, Rome glimpsed a movement close to the ground. Although he was only a lieutenant, Giora Rome was supremely confident and very aggressive. He'd learned an important lesson 2 days earlier, during his first encounter with a MiG.
I was in a very convenient position to shoot him down, but my number 1 told me, move aside, I'm going to shoot him down. And I, as a very young pilot, and a very disciplined pilot at that time, moved aside and he shot him down. And at that moment, I said to myself, I'm not going to move aside, never in my entire life.
Minutes after that first encounter, Rome had shot down 2 MiG-21s with his 30mm cannon. Later that same afternoon, over Syria, he'd knocked a 3rd MiG-21 out of the sky. Now, Giora Rome, the junior officer in the flight, spotted 2 MiG-17s firing on Israeli troops. The MiGs were here. The Mirages were here. The young pilot took the initiative and pitched over into a steep dive. His speed built rapidly, but he was going too fast. And by the time Rome was ready to fire, he'd already overtaken them. The MiGs withdrew to the west.
They saw me, and then they turned as a pair westward to fly back, to run away to Egypt.
Rome looped back round to pursue the MiGs. Meanwhile, the other 2 Israeli Mirages had lost sight of him.
And they asked, where are you flying? Now you remember my story about the first MiG-21 I missed. I said to them, I am flying eastward. And I sent them direction due east.
He'd intentionally sent his superior officers in the wrong direction.
Now I'm by myself with the 2 MiG-17s, and they're flying like about, I would say, 15 meters above the road of the middle of Sinai, very low.
Rome accelerated on the deck. At this altitude, the Mirage was over 100 miles per hour faster than the MiG-17s. But he was taking a beating from the MiG's jet wash. It was nearly impossible to keep his Pipper on the target, but he managed to fire off a shot. 30mm high-explosive rounds tore into one of the MiGs.
And I shot a burst at the number 2. And there were black pieces coming from him all over the place. But unlike the previous MiG-21, he didn't explode. On the contrary, he raised his nose and started to climb, while number 1 was continuing to fly to Egypt.
Rome overtook the climbing MiG.
Something was very strange because he was climbing. He didn't maneuver, just climbing. And all of a sudden, I found myself in close formation with the MiG-17. I look at it. There was no canopy. There was no pilot inside. Part of the black pieces that I saw was the pilot. He ejected himself after he raised his nose. And now I was chasing a pilotless MiG-17. But after another like 10 or 15 seconds, all of a sudden he rolled on his back, his nose fell down, and he hit the ground.
Lieutenant Giora Rome, against overwhelming odds, had destroyed 4 MiGs in 3 days. He was just 1 kill away from being Israel's first jet ace. During the 1960s, the Arab countries surrounding Israel had built up a nearly 5-to-1 superiority in numbers of combat aircraft. The venerable Russian MiG-17 was the most widely used fighter in the Arab world. Although subsonic, the MiG-17 was built like a tank and was extremely maneuverable. In 1962, the Israeli Air Force acquired the French-built Mirage 3 in response to the advanced Russian aircraft being supplied to its Arab neighbors. The Delta Wing Mirage was a lightweight Mach 2 fighter designed to climb quickly to altitude to intercept enemy bombers. It was an extremely versatile aircraft, and the Israelis used it successfully as a fighter bomber. Israel acquired 72 of the new aircraft. Only the best fighter pilots were assigned to Mirages.
The Mirage was very powerful. It was simple, it was clear to me, it was in full control, it was joyful. It was excellent.
Originally armed only with radar-guided missiles, the Israelis insisted on adding cannon. Their approach to air combat called for getting in close and using a gun.
They would put the Pipper on the adversary and they would keep it there for 3 seconds or 2 seconds. That was required to do air-to-air gun kill. And they trained and they trained and they trained and they got very good at it.
The Mirage 3 was faster and had a better rate of climb, but the slower MiG-17 could make tighter turns at low altitudes and could withstand more enemy fire. Rome had just exploited the Mirage's blistering speed to score his 4th kill. But there was one more MiG-17.
And I fly very low and I try to locate him above the horizon, so I'm flying like about 700 knots and very low. And then I saw him, and I was just behind him.
Focused intently on his prey, Rome ignored the calls from his flight leader.
They tell me to stop and to come back on. I say, I'm going to do it in a moment. And the MiG-17 brakes all of a sudden.
The MiG pilot pulled up to 5,000 feet.
Now it's like 6 p.m. And everyone at the Suez Canal is looking at us and shooting at us. So there is like a pool of AAA, and there is a MiG-17, and there is myself.
The Egyptian MiG began making sharp turns back and forth, attempting to lure Rome into a turning fight in which the MiG-17 would excel.
Big mistake to do it with MiG-17 when you fly Mirage, because the MiG-17 flies slower than Mirage. You are doomed. What you should do is to let him fight for his life here while you take advantage of your extra energy and power.
Rome began a series of up and down yo-yos. While the MiG turned horizontally, Rome used his speed advantage to maneuver vertically, to position for a shot.
So it was like 5 or 6 times where I couldn't really put my gun sight within the very steep rate of turn that he had. Every time I went up and he turned and I came down, it was like some dance over the Suez Canal, because here you have a MiG-17, probably with a nice guy driving it, and me.
Finally, Rome got an opening. His Pipper was on the target. 2 seconds was all he needed. It was Lieutenant Giora Rome's 5th MiG kill. The brash 21-year-old was now Israel's first jet ace. But in the skies above the Sinai Peninsula, there were other aircraft threatening the Israelis. A long-distance bombing strike saw Ran Ronan, a distinguished IAF leader and ace pilot, face MiG-19s in one of the best-known encounters of the Six-Day War. .119 Squadron CO Ran Ronan was leading a formation of Mirages to a target over 600 miles away. They were heading to Gadaka, an Egyptian airfield near the Red Sea, south of the Sinai Peninsula. Ronan's mission was to put the runways out of action with specially developed cratering bombs.
We have 8 bombs, each bomb is 500 kilos, with a fuses of, it's called 712, which means the bomb got in and then explode. This because this makes a big crater.
The formation flew low over the Red Sea to avoid detection. Navigating by compass, elapsed time and airspeed, they approached the Egyptian airfield. As they closed in on their target, they would pull up to 5,000 feet, roll over, and begin their bombing run. 540 knots, 900 feet a second. One minute to pull. Ronan ordered, switches on. Final cockpit check. 5 seconds to pull. Ready, ready, pull. Stick back, nose up 50 degrees, full afterburner. The altimeter spun clockwise to 4,000 feet. Suddenly, out of the right side of the canopy, Gadaka appeared. And with it, anti-aircraft fire.
The moment I pulled, they started shooting. It was unbelievable.
The Mirages rolled in, the pilots swallowing their fear and concentrating on the bombing run. The bombs hit their target, rendering the runway useless. The Mirages continued their attack, crisscrossing the airfield. Then, number 3, the second most experienced pilot in the flight, called Bingo Fuel, his limit to return safely home. Ronan must continue the bombing mission with only 3 Mirages. Ronan led 2 and 4, who were new pilots on another strafing pass. Suddenly, 4 shouted in near panic for Ronan to take evasive action.
Then I heard number 4 say, "One break, somebody behind you." I look around and saw MiG-19 very close to me. If you see an airplane firing on you, it's okay because the bullets cross you behind you. When you see his bottom here, and if I go here, a big problem.
The MiG was pulling hard, trying to get his nose inside Ronan's Mirage to lead him with gunfire. Ronan had to force the MiG to overshoot. He pitched his nose up, then rolled over the top and let the MiG pass beneath him, descending right on the MiG's tail. It's a classic Israeli tactic called "let him pass." The MiG overshot. Ronan dropped down on his 6 o'clock. The Egyptian must have known it was all over.
I got behind him 300 meters less, and within no time, I pulled the trigger and shot him. And he crashed into the base.
Ronan's Mirage was suddenly alone in the sky. One MiG was down, but Ronan knew that MiGs hunted in packs. The fight over Gadaka was not over. Egyptian air bases were the Israeli Air Force's primary target in the surprise attacks that started the 6-day war. The plan was called Operation Moked, or Focus. On the 5th of June 1967, during 5 furious hours, the Israelis destroyed over 400 Arab aircraft on the ground. In response, the Egyptians put many of their remaining planes on airborne alert. It was a flight of these MiGs that had just ambushed Ronan's Mirages. During the engagement, Ronan had lost sight of his wingmen.
Then I asked, where are you, the other 2?
Ronan's number 2 gave his location. Ronan was here. His number 2 was here, on the tail of a MiG-19. But Ronan saw another MiG-19 moving into position to bounce him. Ronan slammed the throttle forward.
It was 4 airplanes, a MiG, Mirage, a MiG, and myself.
Number 2 had to make his kill quickly. The other MiG was closing.
So I called him again and tried to convince him to hurry up.
After what seemed an eternity, the MiG in front burst into a shower of flaming debris. Ronan ordered his number 2 to break away out of the fight. With cool efficiency, the squadron leader lined up his second kill of the day.
I closed behind him and, pull the pepper on the cockpit and again pull the trigger and shot him down. And he spinned into the base.
One of Ronan's wingmen was safe, but the second still had to be accounted for. Number 4 reported he was south of the base, hot on the tail of another MiG-19.
Then I looked and saw this is maybe one of the most strange pictures I've ever seen.
It was an almost surreal sight. A MiG-19 attempting to land on a bombed-out runway, with Ronan's number 4 wallowing at low speed behind him. The young Israeli pilot's eagerness for the kill had nearly spelled his demise. He was riding the throttle, struggling to stay behind the descending MiG. The Mirage was on the verge of stalling.
It was a young pilot, very dedicated pilot. He saw a MiG, was so excited.
Ronan needed to convince 4 to abandon the chase, lower his nose and add power, without panicking.
Then in a very calm voice, he told him, okay, leave him. Leave the airplane to the right, carefully to the right, full power.
4 gained momentum, leveled out, and banked away. Ronan pulled abreast of the landing MiG. On the runway, a huge crater loomed. The Egyptian pilot didn't stand a chance. Ronan banked away from the destruction that was now Gadaka. The 3 Mirages barely made it back to base on empty fuel tanks. They had completely paralyzed Gadaka and accounted for 4 MiGs. Rigorous pilot training served Israel well during the Six-Day War. But there was another contribution, a well-timed Mossad operation that gave the Israeli Air Force an unexpected technological edge. Through the clear skies of central Israel on a secret mission. After 3 days on standby alert, the aircraft had been quickly sent aloft. Even the lead pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Ran Ronan, didn't know why they'd been scrambled or where they were headed. Within seconds, the tower ordered the pair to make a left turn, heading 090. Ronan couldn't believe his ears. They were being sent towards Jordan in the opposite direction to their most hostile neighbor, Egypt. Ronan requested confirmation. The tower repeated the order, 090 at full power, adding the Hebrew phrase, Lemivgash.
Every one word is in Hebrew, Lemivgash. It's to interception, which means there is a target identified, and you have all the green lights to intercept it and to kill.
Unsure of what lay ahead, Ronan ordered his wingman, switches on, pilot shorthand to arm his 30mm cannon and missiles. Then, over the radio, came an unexpected voice. Air Force Commander General Motti Hod, speaking directly to Ronan.
Say, run. You will see in a few minutes something that you are not authorized to shut down. I said, Roger.
Hod told Ronan to watch his 11 o'clock.
Suddenly, I saw a black dot on the horizon. And it started to turn left, and then till I was in a 90-degree, and I saw a silhouette of aeroplane.
The shroud of mystery dropped away, revealing a silver prize glinting in the clear blue sky. It was a MiG-21, whose pilot had defected from Iraq. The subject of secret intelligence reports, no Israeli had ever laid eyes on the most advanced aircraft in the Arab world. Until now.
It was like unbelievable, impossible. This is not a dream, but this is, something that beyond your imagination.
The Israelis pulled off a major coup, and that was to have the Mossad entice an Iraqi Christian pilot to bring a then brand new MiG-21F to Israel.
Ronan's amazement at the sight of the MiG was tempered by the threat of the unknown. This gleaming cobra still had fangs.
And then I told my number two, you will be sitting 250 meters behind him. Gun sight on him. Switches on, be ready.
Ronan approached the MiG cautiously, wary of any sudden movements.
I thought maybe this is kamikaze, maybe this is a threat. I left my two hands on the stick and the throttle in case you break, in case something, then I can. I was a little bit higher, very close, 10 meters less. And then he showed me, and I made like that. He answered me. He answered me, my two hands on the stick and the throttle, and he answered me. Only then I raised my left hand, and he answered me. Then I told him, you go after me. You, he said, okay, and like that, and I led him.
With Ronan flying off the MiG's wing, and his number two following with his thumb on the trigger, the unusual three-ship formation headed back to Israel. Danny Shapira, Israel's chief test pilot, couldn't believe the news.
Pilot said to me, hey, just an hour ago, MiG-21 landed in Chatzor. Probably you will be the one to fly it. I thought they were joking, I said, don't give me that bullshit.
But the next morning, he was called in front of General Motti Hod.
He looked at me, smiled, and he said, look, Danny, you're going to be the first Western pilot in the world to fly a MiG-21. I said, well, I'm glad to hear it.
This is the actual footage of Shapira inspecting the MiG-21. Shapira was briefed by the Iraqi pilot, and Russian and Arabic writing in the cockpit was replaced with English and Hebrew. Only a few days later, Shapira closed the canopy and lifted the MiG-21 smoothly into the bright Mediterranean sky.
I didn't have any problem. The rate of flying was excellent. Airplane was lighter, at least 2,000, 2,200 pounds, less than a Mirage.
After familiarizing himself with the aircraft, Shapira, and only Shapira, began to fly against senior Israeli fighter pilots.
We made a program to train our pilots and see how a MiG-21 maneuvers and what a Mirage has to do in order to stay behind of a MiG-21 and shoot it down.
We conducted 120 flights and, practiced against him to see the airplane, to be familiar with the airplane, to see several different silhouettes. And it was amazing
The Israelis found that the MiG-21 was light and fast. But at high speed and low altitude, the control surfaces became sluggish and unresponsive. Worse still, the aircraft had terrible rear visibility.
So I said to them, if you go down slightly, 500 feet below the MiG, he'll never see you. If you see a MiG doing this, it means that he's looking for you. He doesn't see you, but he's looking for you. Once he starts to turn, get in and shoot.
But the Israelis also came to appreciate the aeroplane's essential Russian qualities, especially the ease of maintenance.
It's like what we said at the time, it's like a Volkswagen. Fuel and go, and again and again.
One of the things about the Russians is they learned how to design an aircraft in a high, efficient, low-cost manner. They didn't even have flush riveting, and some of the seams were really rough. But who cares? It still can go Mach 2, and it was efficient, it was fast, it was maneuverable. And if it doesn't last more than a couple days in combat, make it cheap.
The intelligence coup helped the Israelis devise winning tactics during the Six-Day War. Israeli pilots destroyed 58 enemy aircraft in air-to-air combat against a loss of 10 of their own. Over the next decade, Israeli pilots honed their fighting skills in the turmoil of the Middle East. In 1979, using a new generation of American-built aircraft, the Israeli Air Force would introduce the world to the modern age of dogfighting. Four Israeli F-15s from 133 Squadron sped due east towards a world first. The F-15 is a fighter pilot's dream. Powerful, maneuverable, and lethal. The Israelis call them flying SAM sites because of the aircraft's big radar and all the weapons it carries. 8 missiles, 4 radar-guided, and 4 heat-seeking. Not to mention 940 rounds of high-explosive ammunition for its 20mm Gatling gun. This was the first time the F-15 had been used in combat anywhere in the world. The 4 aircraft, led by Colonel Benny Zinka, were alerted by GCI that Syrian MiGs had crossed into Lebanese airspace from the east. The F-15s broke hard. Major Moshe Melnik was flying off Zinka's wing as his number 2.
He opened afterburner and concentrate in the radar. He got immediate lock on the MiGs, and very fast they were in range of launching.
The MiGs were almost 20 miles away, but the F-15 had been designed for BVR, beyond visual range combat. The F-15's powerful radar found the targets and fed the information to its AIM-7 missiles.
Now we got permission from the GCI to open fire, but usually you are waiting till the leader gives you also his permission. And I waited. I was wondering why Benny Zinka is not giving us permission to open fire, because I've seen on my radar that we are in range.
Seconds into the F-15's first armed confrontation, Melnik realized why his leader, Benny Zinka, had not cleared him to fire. Both men wanted the first kill.
So actually, I pressed the pickle button, the launch button, almost the same time, almost the same tenth of a second, and both missiles, both F-7 missiles, were launched together, and like a formation.
2 radar-guided Sparrows streaked away from the F-15s at Mach 3.
And we waited, and it was a marvelous sight to see the missiles going together in a formation, the mountains, the horizon, blue skies, and we waited, and nothing happened.
In the first ever attempt at an F-15 BVR kill, the Sparrows failed to lock and sped harmlessly into space.
We were amazed, we were shocked.
Already an ace in the F-4 Phantom, Melnick instinctively reverted to traditional dogfighting tactics. He looked outside the cockpit.
I went back to the old habits. Good sight, good look outside, not anymore on the radar scope.
The MiGs, realizing they were up against a state-of-the-art adversary, turned back towards Syria. The maneuver exposed their hot tailpipes to Melnick's heat-seeking Python missiles.
They are turning right in front of us, from right to left, right in front of us like this.
Melnick got first tally on the retreating MiGs. The Python 3, an advanced Israeli version of the American AIM-9 Sidewinder, was growling into his headset. Suddenly, the MiGs reversed.
In the middle of this reverse of the turn, I launched my missile.
Melnick was cranked past 130 degrees to stay with the MiGs. The Python, an all-aspect missile, could handle the G. There was no ejection. In just 30 seconds, Melnick had made history. The Israeli fighter pilot had taken first blood for the F-15. The F-15, built by McDonnell Douglas, was the first American aircraft since the F-86 designed specifically for air-to-air combat. In 1976, Israel became the first country outside the United States to acquire the Mach 2 air superiority fighter.
The first flight I made in the F-15 was like my first solo in life. The excitement and joyfulness, and it was great.
Moshe Melnick had destroyed one Syrian MiG-21 over Lebanon, but the MiG's wingman was escaping. 2 other F-15s from the 4-ship formation, piloted by Eitan Ben Eliyahu and Yoel Felsho, leapt into the fight. Felsho's radar locked onto the fleeing MiG-21, and he fired an AIM-7 missile. This time, the Sparrow flew straight and true. It was a second hit for the F-15. Suddenly, a new formation of MiGs appeared. Ben Eliyahu prepared to go head-to-head with one of them.
It's the one airplane, which was number 4 in their formation, flew directly head-on to me, and he was passing by me. This was a 1 versus 1 engagement.
The MiG and the F-15 passed in a classic merge. Each turned hard to get on the other's tail. Ben Eliyahu found himself in a high G turning fight, a style the Israelis tend to dominate.
Once he engaged, when he passed by me, he had no other choice but to engage with me. And I had no other choice but to kill him.
The MiG couldn't sustain a level high G turn. He nosed down to keep his energy up, descending rapidly. Eliyahu was on him like glue, his powerful F-100 turbofan engines providing unmatchable thrust in the turn.
So after 2.5 turns, very close to each other, he was looking for the right second to escape. He had no choice. We were close to the ground. He had to roll out.
The aircraft were too close for Eliyahu to deploy a heat-seeking missile. so he turned to his guns to deliver a classic Israeli coup de grace.
The minute a little bit he rolled out, I did another pull, and I was right after him, 600 yards, 650 yards.
The M61 Gatling gun, nestled in the F-15's right wing, spewed out 20mm ammunition at 6,000 rounds per minute.
All I had to do is to squeeze the trigger 2 times. Two shots, and it's gone.
He took the only gunshot kill at this combat. We were envied, by the way, because we appreciate gunshot kill much more than everything else. He was the hero of this engagement because he brought a gunshot kill like it should be in our books.
What's interesting about this engagement is it ended up where several Syrian MiG-21s were shot down. F-15 pilots used a mix of weapons. This included radar-guided Sparrows, IR-guided missiles, and a cannon kill.
The F-15 had proved its mastery of the skies over Lebanon.
The Israelis made a point, which is that I still retain air superiority in this region, and if you attempt to mess with my strike operations, you'll pay for it.
The F-15's radar and electronics suite are continually being updated and modernized. 50 Syrian MiGs have fallen to F-15 since 1979, without a single F-15 combat loss to Israel. The F-15 established not only air superiority in the region, but air dominance. This was enhanced in 1980 with the arrival of the F-16, a lightweight dogfighter that could also put bombs on target with incredible accuracy. Today, advanced models of both aircraft are in service with the Israeli Air Force. But believing that Syria has acquired the agile Mach 2 MiG-29 with its advanced avionics, Israel has been leading the development of new technology for air combat. The Python 4 and 5 from Rafael may be the world's most advanced all-aspect infrared missiles. When combined with new cockpit avionics, the result is a revolution in dogfighting tactics. Elbit Systems leads the world in the design of helmet-mounted sights that enable fighter pilots to simply look at a target to aim their weapons.
During the 1967 war, it might take 30 seconds for a pilot to maneuver into a position where he can shoot another aircraft down with a gun. At that time, he has to look around and make sure that there's no other airplane engaging him. Today, in a similar engagement, within 5 to 10 seconds, you might be able to look to the left, to the right, detect the target, fire the missile, and kill the airplane.
But despite advances in aircraft and weaponry, the Air Force pilots of the Middle East will continue to flirt with death every time they take to the skies.
We gotta get this season started.